as we begin this new sermon series. But before we launch in to this new sermon series, I want to set a groundwork, set a framework. If you remember in December, we had a 2020 visioning session. And during that meeting, there was a lot of things we discussed. We had a very good discussion, and some great things came out of it. And as the year progresses, you'll hear more and more of what we talked about. But as we begin this particular sermon series, I want to refresh your minds, or if you weren't able to attend, to give you a little bit of this background information, because this sermon series is directly connected to some of what we talked about at that visioning session. In particular, we looked at the demographics the age demographics of our city of Tracy, as well as the age demographics of our Tracy Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we compared and contrasted the two. And this is what we found. That in ages 65 and over, we as a church have 18.5% more than our city does. In the age of 45 to 65, we have about 13% more as a church family than our city does. When it comes to the ages of 25 to 44, we have about 15.5% less. 18 to 24, we have 0.7% less. And 17 and younger, we have about 9% less. So if you break those into two categories, in the 45 and over, we have about 31% more than our city does. And 44 and under, we have 25% less, which basically means our church is heavily skewed older than our surrounding town is. Yes, we are many more years mature than our city is. And this reflects something that Mike On mentioned during his sermon a couple of weeks ago, that you look around and there are very few Generation X people here in our church. There's even fewer millennials in our church. And the Generation Y that we do have, if the trends continue, shows that they probably won't stick around much either. And so because of this, the elders and I have been going through a book titled Growing Young for the past year or so. This book has been produced by the Fuller Youth Research Institute, and it talks about churches that are facing similar problems. We're not alone in this. The Christian church in general in North America is skewing older than the general population. Now, this book talks about how we can reverse that trend. They did a lot of surveys, a lot of research of churches across denominations, across sizes, across geographical locations. And they found that there are churches that are growing young. Instead of growing older compared to the general population, their median age is actually lowering. Now, to be clear, this is not saying that people from older generations are not as valuable as those from younger generations. Everyone, no matter your age, no matter what generation you are from, are a valuable part of this church family. But what this is saying is that each generation, each age group brings its own strengths. And we can't have a properly functioning, healthy church if it's only predominantly one group or the other. There needs to be a healthy balance. And this is what we need as a church, and this is what this book talks about, how we can have that healthy balance of ages in church, how we can have those Generation X, those millennials, those Generation Ys, how we can keep them and attract them and have them be a vibrant part of our church family. And in this study, in this research, they've identified 6 core commitments that churches that grow young have. 6 things that they spend their time intentionally doing in order to attract and to keep people from the younger generations. And these are the 6 core commitments. One, the first is to unlock keychain leadership. The second is they empathize with today's young people. The third is they take Jesus' message seriously. Fourth, they fuel a warm community. Fifth, they prioritize young people and families everywhere. And sixth, they are the best neighbors. And this is what this 6-part sermon series is going to dig into. We're going to be covering what these core commitments mean, what it looks like in Scripture, what it looks like in our lives, what it looks like in the life of this church, so that we can begin to understand, we can begin to grow in our understanding, in our maturity, and we can begin to grow young as well. Does that make sense? I hope I haven't lost anyone along the way. And so this is what we're beginning today with our series, Glory and Growth. And we're going to begin by looking at that first core commitment, keychain leadership. How many of you like insects? All right, I see a few hands going up. You know, when we hear the word insects, probably most of us think of like spiders and cockroaches, right? We're like, oh, that's not what I like. Get those away from me, right? But there's a lot of other kinds of insects as well. Crystal, my wife, loves insects. To each their own, right? But one of her favorite insects is actually a pretty nice insect. It's the butterfly. How many of you like butterflies? All right, many more hands, right? And if you can think back to your elementary science classes, you'll probably remember learning about the various stages of butterfly development and growth, right? You'll remember the different, the caterpillar, the eggs, the larva, the cocoons, and all of that stuff. But in order to help maybe refresh our memories, to help us better understand that transformation process, to help us better understand the glory that comes in that growth, let's watch this quick video. Pretty interesting, right? It's amazing, actually, if you've actually studied all of the things that go into that process. But when we see the monarch larva, we might look at it and think, oh, that's interesting, that's kind of cool. But if that larva never changed, if it never transformed, if it never grew, we would miss out on the more beautiful part of its transformation into a butterfly. See, when the caterpillar goes into that cocoon and it breaks out of the chrysalis and it is metamorphosized into something new, there is something that changes, and that interesting, weird, cool-looking caterpillar now is this beautiful, colorful, dainty butterfly. There's this beauty that is evident now after the growth has happened, after the transformation has taken place. There's more color, there's more delicate features, there's more usefulness when it comes to pollination. And none of these would have ever existed if that caterpillar hadn't grown, hadn't changed. There is a glory that is evident in that process of growth. And glory becomes evident in growth not just when caterpillars turn into butterflies, but there is a glory that becomes evident in your growth and in my growth. And in fact, this is the major truth of this sermon series, that God's glory, not our glory, but God's glory is revealed through our growth, both as people and as a church. That God's glory is revealed to the world when you grow as a person, when I grow as a person, and when we grow collectively as a group, as a church family. And this is the key. As we begin to unlock and unpack and dig in to what it means to grow, to find glory. It's all about God's glory found in our growth. And today we're looking at this concept of key chain leadership and how key chain leadership impacts our growth and impacts God's ability to be glorified in our growth. Now you might be wondering this morning, what in the world is key chain leadership? Right? What is that even talking about? Well, hopefully by the end of the sermon this morning, you'll be able to answer that question fully and completely for yourself. As many of you, most of you probably, hopefully know, I've been going to class to earn my doctorate degree, and the emphasis is in leadership. And in this process, one of the truths that I keep learning and bumping into and reading over and over and over again is this concept that is here expressed by John Maxwell, a well-known Christian author and leadership expert. He says, leaders become great not because of their power, but because of their ability to empower others. Let me read that again. Leaders become great because of their own power? No, not because of their own power, but because of their ability to empower others. Now, this thought, this concept isn't just unique to John Maxwell. This is a thought, this is a concept that we find over and over and over again expressed by a variety of people, of leaders, of CEOs, of authors, of academics, of intellectuals, of philosophers that say the same basic concept. People from Simon Sinek to Sheryl Sandberg to Bill Gates. All of these people have identified the fact that what makes a good leader isn't the ability to stand up and tell someone to do something and when to do it. It's the ability of someone to come alongside someone else, to teach them, to train them, to equip them, to empower them to know what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. This is the difference. This is really at least the surface. We're starting to see this is what key chain leadership is. It's not someone that gets up and points and demands and forces, but it's someone that comes alongside and equips and empowers others. Now, I know some of you might be thinking right now, well, Pastor Tyler, I'm not a leader, so I'm just going to get a head start on my Sabbath afternoon nap. I don't know, this doesn't really apply to me. I don't boss anyone. I'm not a boss at work. I'm just going to get my snooze in early. But please hold on. Don't quite do that just yet. See, there are some of us here that have titles that put us into leadership positions at work. There are those of us here that might not have the title of leader, but we still find ourselves as a leader at work because coworkers come to us and ask for our opinion, ask for our advice, ask for our support. There are others of us that find ourselves leaders at home, leaders in our families. Some of us here are leaders here in this church, leaders as an elder or a head deacon, the AV coordinator, the children's ministries leader. There are some of us that are leaders in other organizations in the community. There are some of us that want to be leaders someday. There are those of us that might have been leaders for decades and we're trying to figure out a way to step back, perhaps. And there might be others of us here this morning that simply want to know what makes a leader a good leader for future reference. And this is part of it. Understanding what good leadership is, what God-honoring leadership is. It is a significant part to our growth. And so even though you might think to yourself this morning, I'm not a leader, I don't have the title, I believe all of us in this room are leaders to some extent. We have influence over some people in our lives. There are people that look up to us, that come to us for help and advice and input. And this is something that's important for us all to understand. What it means to have that influence, what it means to honor God with that influence, what it means to empower others so that God's glory can be revealed in our lives and in their lives. So even if you might find yourself thinking, this is not for me, please don't check out. Please don't hit that snooze early. Stay tuned in. I can guarantee you that you'll be glad you did, or your money back, all right? See, many people that find themselves in leadership positions, they often tend to end up thinking that it was all because of them. That it was due to their strength, their skills, their talent, their power. It's all because of me. I got myself here, and now because I am here, because I am the leader, you all need to treat me as I deserve. You need to listen to what I say, you need to do what I say, and you can't give any back talk because I'm number one. I'm the boss. I'm in charge. Because it's all about me. But this is a very stunted view of leadership. Someone that stands up and thinks that it's all about him or her. Someone who stands up and demands other people to do exactly what they say when they say it. That's as if a monarch caterpillar just stayed in that larva stage. There is a lot more growth that needs to happen. And in fact, we find this in the Bible. Time and time again, God taking leaders that might have gotten to that point of thinking that it's all about them, and God using them and maturing them and growing them to see that it's not just about them, that it's about helping and empowering other people as well. In fact, we see this very clearly in the story of Moses. Moses was perhaps one of the greatest leaders that this world has ever seen. He had spent 40 years learning the best cutting-edge things there in the court of Pharaoh in Egypt. Then he spent another 40 years in the wilderness as a shepherd learning spiritual things there from God himself. And then he goes back to Egypt and he goes and he begins to lead his people, the Israelites, out of slavery in Egypt and begins them on this journey towards the promised land. And things are going pretty well. I mean, he's this leader of this huge nation. But then we see this exchange take place in Exodus chapter 18, verses 17 to 19, between Moses and Jethro, his father-in-law. Moses' father-in-law said to him, "You are not doing this right." He says, "Moses, you're doing a great job. You know, you're the leader. Everyone knows you're the leader. You've learned so much. You've done so much. But it can't just be all about you. You have to take that I'm number one hat off here," Jethro is saying. "You and the people who come to you will get too tired. If you keep making it all about you, you're going to exhaust yourself and everyone else. This is too much work for you. You can't do it by yourself. Now listen to me, and I will give you some advice. And so he does. And we read in verses 24 to 26 that Moses listened to his father-in-law, and he implemented this advice that Jethro gave him. He chose capable men from the Israelites and made them leaders over the people. They were officers over groups of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. These officers solved disagreements all the time. They brought the hard cases to Moses, but they decided the simple cases for themselves. See, Moses was making it all about him. He said, I need to make all the decisions because I'm the leader. I'm the one in charge. But Jethro says, no, that's not really what God-honoring leadership is about. He says, it's a good thing, Moses, that you have blossomed into a beautiful butterfly. But it can't just end with you. Moses, you need to create more butterflies. And so Moses did, and he created these other tribal leaders that helped him carry the burden of leadership of this nation of Israel. And we see this not just happen with this creation of these tribal leaders, but again we see Moses identify a young man named Joshua. And there was something about Joshua's spiritual connection. There was something about Joshua's talents and his skills that Moses took him alongside with him. And in his decades, his 40 years of leading the nation of Israel, he taught Joshua, he equipped Joshua, he empowered Joshua so that Joshua heard what Moses did and he saw what Moses did. And so that when Moses left the scene, Joshua was equipped and empowered to become Israel's next leader. Because Moses, along the way, had decided to share the keys with Joshua. And this is what key chain leadership is. It's when a leader decides to empower someone else by sharing the keys. Sometimes they're literal keys, sometimes metaphorical keys, but sharing the keys with someone else. And we see this in plenty of times throughout the Bible. We see it in the story of Naomi and Ruth. Naomi gives Ruth some keys. She explains to her what it means to be a Moabite woman living in Israel. She begins to explain the Israelite culture. She begins to give her the keys on how she can reestablish a family in Israel. Naomi pours herself into Ruth. She empowers Ruth. She equips her. She trains her so that Ruth can be able to begin a new family line there in the nation of Israel. We see this in the story of Barnabas and Paul in the New Testament. Paul had gone by Saul. He was a persecutor of Christians. He was an enemy of the Christian believers, the followers of Christ. But when he had that transformative journey to Damascus, where God said, Paul, you've messed things up. Saul, you're doing things completely backwards. You need to change your life. And Saul said, okay, I will. And he becomes Paul. Barnabas comes alongside him and says, Paul, all right, I need to show you some things. Now I need to let you know what it means to be a part of this Christian community. I need to teach you, to empower you, to equip you to be a follower of Christ and not to be an enemy of Christ. And let me give you some keys. Let me share some keys with you so that you can use your talents, your skills, your leadership abilities to become a leader within this new community. Time and time again, story after story, we find Scripture telling us that God is in favor of key chain leadership. See, God's glory is revealed through our growth, both as people and as a church. God's glory was revealed when Moses shared the keys with Joshua. God's glory was revealed when Naomi shared the keys with Ruth. God's glory was revealed when Barnabas shared the keys with Paul Time and time again, God's glory was made manifest in this world because of these relationships that people had, where they empowered others, they equipped others, and they shared the keys with them. Are you with me so far? All right, good. I'm glad to see none of you have taken that early afternoon nap. Well, most of you haven't taken that early afternoon nap. So what does it mean to be a keychain leader? Well, there's 4 kinds of keychain leaders. The first is the keyless leader. These are often young and unexperienced people. They don't have much authority or access. They spend their time proving they're worthy to possess keys. Because they feel they don't have the age, the maturity, the experience, they need to prove themselves. They feel they need to prove themselves over and over again that yes, I have a key. Yes, I earned this key. And perhaps this was where Moses was at when Jethro had that talk with him. He said, yes, I learned in Egypt and I learned in the wilderness, but I need the Israelites to know that I'm the leader. I need them to see that I'm worthy to carry the keys. And Jethro says, no, we get it. You have the keys. You don't need to keep worrying about this. We understand you have the training. You've helped take us out of Egypt. We get it. Now we understand you have the keys, but it's time for you to share those keys. Another kind of keychain leader is the key hoarding leader. This is someone who always hoards the keys and refuses to give others access. They run the show. So it's not just good enough for them to have the keys. They won't even use the keys to open the door for anyone else. They hold the keys and they keep the doors shut for everyone else around them. And perhaps you have had a boss like that. I think maybe all of us have had a boss like that to some extent or another. The boss that says, you know what, I'm the boss, and you need to know that I'm the boss. You need to know that I'm in charge. You need to know that I'm the one that makes decisions, and you just need to do what I say and don't ask why because I'm the boss. Have you had someone like that in your life? Right. Someone that hoards the keys, that doesn't care about training you, that doesn't care about equipping you, about empowering you. They just care about gathering their own power, maintaining their own power, and keeping a tight control over every little thing. A third type of keychain leader is the key loaning leader. These are the leaders that often take keys off the keychain and let others borrow them, but just temporarily. They make sure that the keys are returned quickly. I think perhaps this might be a micromanaging type of leader. Someone that says, all right, this is what needs to be done. Here you go, do it. Oh, no, you messed up. Sorry, I'm just going to do it now. Right? Perhaps this is a type of leader that lets you borrow the keys almost just so they can check the box that said they let you borrow the key. Right? That they don't really have any intention of letting you keep the key, of letting you get any real, genuine experience with the key. They just want to say, oh, yeah, I let Jimmy be in charge of that event, but, I knew from the very beginning he was just going to make a mess of it, and he did, and so he's never going to get that key again. Oh, I knew Chandra's going to, her quality of work it's a B+, and I do an A+ level of work, so, I let her try it, but, I'm just going to take that key back because she's just not up to par. This is those kinds of leaders that they'll let you borrow the key, but only briefly. There's no true value to you because they're just eager to snatch it back at the very first sign of trouble. The fourth and final type of keychain leader is a keychain leader. This person is very aware of the keys they hold. They're constantly opening doors for some while training and entrusting others who are ready for their own set of keys. They use their keys. They don't just keep them in their pocket. They use them to unlock doors and help you to go through. They use their keys to help equip and to train and to share these keys with others with the hopes that they can have their own set of keys permanently. This is the kind of key set that we find that good God-honoring leaders have. This mentality of willing to train and equip and entrust others with valuable keys. These are the leaders that understand that it's not good enough for them to blossom into that beautiful butterfly, but that they need to produce many other butterflies themselves. And here are the qualities, the characteristics of key chain leaders. They are mature, which doesn't necessarily mean old, all right? They just have a mature outlook, a mature approach to life. They are empowering of others. They're not concerned with maintaining and controlling their own power. They're willing and eager to distribute it and empower other people. They are real and not relevant. Sometimes leaders get so caught up with wanting to be relevant. They want to, be able to know what kind of music those kids are listening to or the latest slang that they're saying. But that's not really the important thing. The important thing is for them to be real and genuine. Because when someone's just saying these slang words and referencing music artists that they really don't know anything about, words that they don't really understand, it comes off as the opposite, all right? If they just use their real words, their real vocabulary, if they really love Mozart and just want to talk about Mozart, but that's genuine, that's much more appealing than trying to be authentic. That they show who they really are, who their genuine selves are. They're knowledgeable of what matters to people, not just what matters to other leaders. They care about what matters to the person or the people they're trying to empower. They care about the audience, the congregation, the customer. They're not just concerned about what the best practices are or the reputation that other leaders might or that they might have with other leaders. They know what's really happening in the real world, and that's what they care about. They are warm and not distant. They don't have a closed door. They're easy to get a hold of. They have a genuine interest in the lives and the lives and the cares and the concerns of other people. And finally, they are focused on the big picture. They don't just get so tunnel focused on one small thing. They see how it all impacts the bigger goal, the bigger picture. And in fact, these qualities, these characteristics of a good key chain leader is what we find with Jesus throughout the Gospels. We find Jesus exhibiting these characteristics, particularly in how he interacts with his 12 disciples, how he interacts with people at large. When you think about it, Jesus, he was mature, but he was only in his early 30s. He wasn't that old. I know that might sound old for some of the teenagers, but, early 30s still isn't that old. He was empowering of others. He wasn't just trying to control all the power. He's like, no, here, take it, go, run with it. He was real, not trying to be concerned about being relevant. He was there to genuinely show and exemplify the character, the nature of God on earth. He was knowledgeable of what matters to people. He cared about what the average fisherman thought. He cared about the experience of the prostitutes and the tax collectors. And he didn't really care about what the Pharisees and the religious leaders thought and did and said. He was warm and not distant. He didn't just stay on a mountaintop. He didn't just plant himself underneath a tree. He went with people and lived with people and ate with people and did life with people. And he was focused on the big picture. He knew where he was going. He knew what his goal was. He knew what his mission was. And he knew what he had to do. And he knew what others people needed to do to help him accomplish that goal and that mission. And so we see this in his life and his teachings throughout the Gospels. And in fact, after some time of Jesus interacting with his disciples, after them spending time together, after them understanding, catching a glimpse, they didn't quite fully get it, but after them catching a glimpse of Jesus' mission, after them hearing him preach and teach, after witnessing his miracles, after them kind of understanding the direction, the trajectory of this big picture, Jesus takes his 12 disciples and he sends them out in pairs. We read about this in Matthew. Actually, we read about it in all the Gospels, but this account is found in Matthew chapter 10. Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out impure spirits, to heal every disease and sickness. Whose authority did he give? He gave his authority, right? Jesus wasn't saying, hey, I have all the authority. God has given me all the authority on heaven and earth, and so I'm going to keep it. Jesus says, no, here, look, God has given me this authority. I have divine authority. Now I'm going to give it to you. Take my authority. Take these keys and go. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. As you go, proclaim this message. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, freely give. And this is the heart, this is the core, this is the essence of Key Chain leadership. Freely you have received, so freely give. Someone in your life previously has given you the keys to get you to where you're at now. So now you get to give those keys to someone else. Jesus says, I have received this authority from my Father. I have received this authority from heaven, and I have received it freely, and so I'm giving it to you freely. And because you receive it freely, now you give it freely. Don't hoard onto this authority. Don't hoard onto the keys. Don't try to make yourself more powerful. I'm giving it to you so you can give away. This is what Key Chain leadership is about. It's about training others and equipping others and then sending them out so that they can continue to do the work themselves instead of you trying to do everything because you're the boss, because I'm number one. And Jesus didn't just stop there with the 12 disciples. Jesus actually sends out the 72 disciples. A little bit less familiar of a story, I think. But if you do the math, those pairs of disciples that Jesus sent out, there was six pairs, right? And each pair, it seems, picked up 12 more disciples. Because you do 6 times 12, you get 72. So he sent these pairs out. They got 12 more disciples to come back to Jesus. And now Jesus says, all right, now I have 72 of you. Now this is what I'm going to do. In John 10, verse 1, it says, after this, meaning after Jesus sent out the 12 and they came back, after this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them 2 by 2 ahead of him to every town and place he was about to go. Whoever listens to you listens to me. Whoever rejects you rejects me. Again, we see this sense of authority being shared, of Jesus giving the key, saying, what they do to you is what they're doing to me. Because I'm giving you the keys. You're my representatives. I'm not trying to hoard and maintain my own power, my own reputation. Here, you go, and you take it too. And the 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in what? In your name. Even the demons submit to us in your authority because the demons recognized that Jesus had given them his authority. The demons recognized that Jesus had shared the keys with these 72 disciples. The demons recognized that this is the way that heaven operates. That God is all about empowering and equipping and training others and giving them the keys to go and carry out the work. Jesus is not stingy with the keys. Jesus wants to hand the keys over to you and to me. This is how he operated on earth 2,000 years ago, and this is how God continues to operate today. That God is a God of key chain leadership. He doesn't hoard the keys. He doesn't micromanage. He doesn't just let you borrow the key for a minute or two until you mess up and then snatch it back again. God says, here, no, take it. Take it and go. I trust you because I have given you my authority and my power. Take it and continue this work on earth. I want to close this morning with the story of Steve Letty. Steve Letty joined the Seventh-day Adventist Church as a teenager. An evangelist came to his Colorado town, and he wanted to go to the meetings. But his parents didn't want to go. None of his other family members wanted to go. But Steve wanted to go to these meetings, and so he went alone, riding on his bicycle. And after the meetings were done, he decided to get baptized. And so he joined that church as a teenager. And he would come week after week, but he would come alone. And because his parents weren't there, because his family wasn't there, the head deacon decided to take him under his wing. And shortly thereafter, Steve became a deacon in the church because he saw what the deacons did. The head deacon had trained him, had shown him, had explained to him what the responsibilities were. Steve knew what it meant to be a deacon. He knew that it meant he had to come when he was on rotation, that he had to arrive at church way earlier than anyone else to turn the heater on. He knew that it meant staying after church to sweep up, to empty the garbage, to tidy up the bathrooms, and to lock up at the end of the day. And because of these requirements of a deacon, the church gave Steve a set of keys, literal keys. And as he looked at these keys, the responsibility began to sink in. And he didn't want to let his new church family down. And so he carried out his responsibilities faithfully, even when that meant during those winter months when he had to get up before the sun did and ride to the church in the snow on his bicycle. At the end of every Sabbath that he was on duty, he made sure the church sparkled. After a few years, he graduated from high school and got a job working at Domino's. One slow night, the manager of the Domino's said, "I have to go take care of some business. I'll be back. But in the meantime, Steve, just tidy up the store." So Steve said, "Okay, I can do that." And he began to go to work. And when the manager came back, the manager was stunned, flabbergasted. He said, "Steve, what did you do? The store is sparkling." He said, "Steve, I tell all the employees to tidy up when I'm gone, but none of them ever do. At least not nearly as good as you did. This is amazing." And this led to Steve quickly becoming the assistant manager, and then the manager, and then the regional manager. And along the way, there was a corporate banquet held to honor some employees, and Steve was honored with an award for his hard work. And at the end of the banquet, the CEO of Domino's went over and talked with Steve's fiancée and said, "How did Steve ever learn to become such a hard worker and such a good leader?" And his fiancée said, "He learned it by being a deacon at church." Steve continued to work his way up until he got to be the second highest ranking corporate executive in the entire organization. He ended up leaving to become a pastor and church planter, though. But he experienced tremendous success because his church was willing to train him, equip him, and hand the keys over to him. Because he experienced key chain leadership, his life was transformed. See, God's glory is revealed through our growth, both as people and as a church. And key chain leadership was central in revealing God's glory in Steve's life. Key chain leadership is a concept that I believe Ellen White, one of the co-founders of our church, was alluding to in this quote when she says, "Only one lease of life is granted us, and the inquiry with everyone should be, how can I invest my powers so that they may yield the greatest profit? How can I do most for the glory of God and the benefit of my fellow men? For life is valuable only as it is used for the attainment of these ends." This is what key chain leadership is. It's about doing what we can for the benefit of others, for pouring ourselves out into other people, for empowering them, for equipping them so that they can grow, so that they can move out of that caterpillar stage and that their wings can sprout and they can become a beautiful butterfly. And in that process, we grow and we transform. And as we grow and as they grow, something miraculous happens. God's glory is revealed in my life and in their lives. And the world around us takes note of this. See, the world might look at us and say, "Yeah, you're a pretty interesting, cool-looking caterpillar." But if we refuse to grow, if we refuse to change, if we refuse to be transformed, then that's all they're ever going to see. And the ability of God's glory to be put on full display will be greatly diminished because they will never catch the glimpse of that butterfly. This morning, do you want God's glory to be revealed in your life? If so, one of the ways to do it is to unlock key chain leadership in your life. Again, I know you might think, I'm not a leader, I don't have a leader's position at work. But I guarantee you there are people in your life that you have influence with. There are people in your life that come to you for help, for support, for advice, whether it's at work or at school or in your neighborhood. What are you going to do with those opportunities? What are you going to do with that influence? God says, I have put you in that position so that you can help those other people. That you can help them grow and change and transform. And when you do that, that's going to help you grow and change and transform. And when that happens, God says, I am going to be glorified. I know I want God's glory to be revealed in my life. And I hope you do too as well.